In the video of today, we are going to speak about the future son of Boruto and Sarada. Will they really get married after all? There exist some possibilities that go against this outcome. However, if this happens, if in the end they form a family, what would be the power and the maximum potential of this son or daughter that both would have? It is about this that we are going to beat today. So stay until the end of this video, that it is extremely epic, and of course already leave your like. That is very important, and if you are new here already, go subscribing to not lose any new video. Beauty, now enough of stalling and let's go straight to the video. And, well, my dear Juninho, one of the things most cool, however strange, that we saw after the end of Naruto Shippuden was the birth of several children that became very important in this new generation of ninjas that we are accompanying in Boruto. On one side it is cool because until now we have the anime and the manga of Boruto, but on the other side, it is strange to imagine that practically everyone of the generation of Naruto got married and had children practically at the same time. But anyway, take away this bizarre part. It is cool to receive the combination of clans that was made by our dear Kishimoto, bringing all this new generation. Many of these young games were born from the combination of very powerful clans, as in the case of the son of Shikamaru and Temari, Shikadai, that has blood of the Nara clan and of the Kazekage clan. Well then, our new protagonist Boruto, who is son of the 7th Hokage Naruto with the princess of the Byakugan Hinata, and as we know both are from very important clans, the Uzumaki and the Hyuga. And in the case of Boruto, this fusion of clans ended up resulting in his dojutsu, the unknown but very powerful Jogan. And as it is always good to remember, it has already been confirmed by one of the animators that yes, this dojutsu, the Jogan, was born in parts from the combination between the powers of feeling negative energies of the Jinchuriki of Kurama, that until then was Naruto, with the ocular power of the Hyuga, the Byakugan. So with this fact in mind, a very interesting question has to be raised. For example, if a Hyuga gains an Uchiha and they have children, what would happen? If Boruto and Sarada have a child in the future? Well, as I said previously, there exists, yes, the possibility of this ending up not happening, and this possibility has to be mentioned. After all, as we saw in the beginning of the anime and of the manga, what seems is that Boruto was the only ninja that remained, at least it is what it seems. And if this really happened, say goodbye to a possible son of the couple, Borosara. But even if everyone is alive, there exists the possibility of Kishimoto opting to not form this couple because, according to Kishimoto himself and Boruto, things would have a completely different outcome. That is, it may be that Boruto saves everyone, but that in the end, he ends up losing his life, or who knows, he ends up becoming a rogue ninja that lives out there finding dangers and different. From the Hokages, he would opt to not have a family for knowing of the sufferings that Sarada had in not having her father close. So yes, people, there exists the possibility that in the end the couple ends up not forming. But as we want to know how, would be the union between a Hyuga with an Uchiha. Well, let's imagine that this happened, and then how would this child be? Well, in the words of Kishimoto himself, a couple between a Hyuga and an Uchiha would give a very promising and powerful young one. Kishimoto said that the fusion between these two clans that descend from the Otsutsuki would result in a young boy or girl that would have in one eye a Sharingan and in the other a Byakugan, not mattering in which side each eye would be. But the fact is that this possible child would have a special dojutsu of each clan in each eye, and this is very interesting to imagine. But thinking in the future where this happened, where Sarada and Boruto had a child, let's call him Soruto, okay? What would be the abilities that he would have? Well, it may seem silly mixing these two powers, but it can really be something out of the devastating reality. Because just with the destructive power of the Sharingan, it is already possible to do many things. And if the Byakugan combined with the abilities of Naruto already brought forth something very strong, the Jogan. Mixing the Byakugan with the Sharingan is where things get absurdly unimaginable. Just to begin to play a little with the junction of the two abilities, it simply could give to the user the power to put the opponent under effective ninjutsu, simple or large scale, without even needing to open the eyes or look directly at the opponent, all thanks to the Byakugan that has the vision of 360 degrees. We can go even further, guys. Let's try to imagine the devastating effects that in the case of Soruto, if he had a kenjutsu of the level of power of Kotoa Matsukami of Shisui or Tsukuyomi of Itachi. These yes jutsus combined with the most basic abilities of a common Byakugan would have a devastating effect arriving close to the power that the infinite Tsukuyomi has. Of course, given the due proportions, since the infinite Tsukuyomi can place all the earth in the same genjutsu. However, Kishimoto revealed in Databook 4 that Kaguya used her Byakugan to increase the field of vision of her infinite Tsukuyomi when she used it for the first time, and we know that the Byakugan of a Hyuga can have 30 kilometers or more in a radius of 360 degrees. Of course, Kaguya has much more power than a common Hyuga. So if the Byakugan tends to be more powerful, even however, we have to take one thing in consideration. We are speaking of the Byakugan by young ones. In this possibility, Soruto could be born with the Jogan of his father, and not with the basic form, the Byakugan. So maybe it is possible he have a much greater reach. Since the Jogan is a dojutsu that has the same abilities as the Byakugan, only it is potentially more powerful. An example of this is if the Sharingan and later the Mangekyu Sharingan of Soruto had the Amaterasu. Then yes, things would get even more out of reality because some jutsus like the Amaterasu or any jutsu that needs visual connection could also get even more offensive with Byakugan or with Jogan. That because of its penetrating look being stronger than that of the Sharingan, since this type of jutsu depends basically of the first point of contact in the opponent through the direct visual contact. But with Byakugan, this with all certainty would not be necessary anymore, giving the possibility to use any ability of this type from any place that his chakra could touch and his vision in 360 degree could see, and so people we could stay speaking about abilities that would be benefited by this junction. The whole day that it would not have end. Do you know why? Because we have to remember that Boruto now is a perfect Otsutsuki. So everything that we have already spoken until now about the powers and natural abilities of the Uchiha and of the Hyuga can be elevated even more in question of power. First, because chakra would not be lacking for young Soruto, just as the sons of Hagoromo were some specials for being sons of an Otsutsuki, the same Soruto would be. And look that Boruto is a perfect Otsutsuki now. That is, besides having much chakra and resistance, young Soruto would still have all a range of possibilities of Momoshiki to be able to be born with him. Of course, not always someone that is son of very powerful ones is necessarily obligated to be born powerful. Hagoromo Otsutsuki himself said in Naruto, speaking about Ashura and Indra, and Naruto himself that was son of Minato and Kushina. And even so, he had several limitations. However, we know that a new generation always tends to surpass the previous one, and as everything indicates, the next generations will be made of ninjas with abilities of scientific ninja. Tools and others will have abilities created from DNA and cells of ancient ninjas like Mitsuki and the cyborgs and clones of Amato. And of course, in the case of Soruto, we will also have heirs of Otsutsuki. That is, he could be born either as a common ninja, or he could be born with the Rinnegan of Momoshiki with the abilities of using chakra rods, or even be born with the ability of flying naturally without using sand like Gaara does, or using a jutsu that diminishes his weight to get lighter than air like the old Onoki did. Another question that I see, here is the question about the form that he would be. For example, when Hagoromo and Hamura were born, both had horns and both were born with the skin of the Otsutsuki. Already when Ashura and Indra were born, they were more human, and although still were very powerful. So Soruto could be born with the skin of the Otsutsuki, or then the middle term between the skin like human and of the Otsutsuki. An example of this is Orochimaru that is very pale. Mitsuki is pale just like him, and we know that Mitsuki is an experiment of Orochimaru using various cells, including his own. So there exists the possibility of Soruto being born with a different skin, and this could bring some strangeness for the children of that generation. Because think with me, Mitsuki already is different from the others, but if we look to those Uchiha clones, they are even more pale. And if we notice one thing, we will note that they were not introduced in the Ninja Academy. Of course, a bunch of identical children with Sharingan would be kind of strange, but still it is kind of sad to imagine that they have to stay in the orphanage for not looking like the people of the village. Of course, this may have to do more with the risk of having a bunch of Sharingan out there than with their appearance. But I believe at first if Soruto was born more looking like Otsutsuki than like a Terran, he could yes have an impact in his adaptation inside the academy and of the village. But if we think Naruto suffered a lot only for having a Bijuu inside him, and after he became Hokage, things improved a lot in this regard. So maybe Soruto will not have any impact until... because Boruto will be very possibly the greatest hero of the ninja world. But basically, that's it, people. This would be at least the potential of a possible son of the couple Sarada and Boruto. This would be Soruto Uzumaki Uchiha.